All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Purple Political Breakdown. How's it going? How's your day been? We're back at it again. Today, we are doing another open panel discussion conversation. These are dialogues I have with my great guests, co hosts, I like to say, Elijah and Danny. And we talk about different issues. There is still basically an open invitation for people to come up and share their perspective. I am very interested to have someone who can provide the talking points, or at the very least provide uh, the points of views from other parts of the political spectrum. I don't want to get too crazy with it, but the idea is to be able to have fruitful conversation. So today we're going to be talking about ICE, considering that is the what's been on the news for the last basically 2 months. Whether we should abolish ICE, the conversation around ICE, the situation that happened with Alex Preddy recently, and all that good stuff. So, in order to have that conversation, Elijah, Danny, how you feeling? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back on, Rodell.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. I'm just glad to be here, chilling like a villain, doing schoolwork, and I'm excited to talk about some of the stuff going on. I've been thinking about it a lot recently, so I'm excited to get it out there.
All right, excellent. Well, there's a lot of places to go to, but since you told me you have very the things that you want to go into right off rip, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So I will let you start, but to lay the groundwork, the big thing that happened recently, if you guys are not aware, an individual named Alex Preddy got shot and killed in Minnesota. And based on how I saw everything, and my stream actually got taken down, so I shouldn't have shown the gun and everything. But two girls were, you could argue, hassling the ICE officers at the bare maximum. To me, I think it's hard to say that they were being like violent or antagonistic, but they were in the way. That got in. The ICE officer is pretty mad. They pushed one of the women to the ground. He got in between because it seemed like you're kind of doing too much, buddy, and then he started getting pepper sprayed. Then five other ICE officers got on top of him. One of the ICE officers took his gun, because he did have a gun legally in his holster, not in his hand. The ICE officer took his gun out, and the moment the ICE officer took the gun out, the other ICE officer who was right next to him shouted gun and started laying fire and just killed Alex. So that is what everybody's talking about, because this is the second time it happened in Minnesota, and this is the second U.S. citizen this happened to. In both situations, I think this is worse than the Renee Good situation. Both situations are circumstances where it's like they were not criminals, clearly, in what was going on. So, Elijah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess just to preface this and to lay the foundation, I think that multiple things can be true at once, and there's like a primary party that's at fault, and then there's bad decisions that could have been made differently. And I just want to say at the very most, the ICE officer, at the very least, the person who shot first, the ICE officer who shot him, is 100% in the wrong. There's just like no justified reason for this to be happening, especially when there's not lethal force or anything like that. However, a perspective that I heard that I had not heard that I found kind of interesting was leaning on the confusion of the situation. And so what they were saying was that for the officers, that other than the one who took the gun out of the holster, when they had seen the gun, the protocol was to yell like gun, 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 something like that, which alerts the officers. And then after that, what they said is there wasn't an announcement that the gun was disarmed. And so I think that the conservatives are kind of using this idea to say that because of the confusion, the threat assessment, all they had was gun, and then they heard a gunshot. And that's what caused the preceded 10 shots after, which may seem ridiculous or may seem like an execution. So this is kind of a defense of at least the firing squad that followed after. They're saying is the result of some sort of confusion because gun was listed or gun was yelled out and they didn't know the situation and they heard a gunshot. I'd also heard that there's an investigation going on right now about Alex's gun. Apparently there's an idea that it could have fired on its own, like some sort of faulty thing. This sounds like the most scuffed, easily made up piece of evidence that I could possibly imagine. But apparently there is an investigation going on. So if you look at it from the perspective of, the multiple other officers who are not intimately involved in taking the gun out of the holster, everyone thinks there's a gun, they hear a gunshot, the subsequent firing happens. So again, this is not to defend the actions of ICE or even like a particular officer. This is just to provide an interesting context that I wonder if you guys have thoughts about in terms of this situation, especially in regards to the firing squad aspect of this particular death.
Well, the way I've seen the video a couple of times, and the way I see it is, it was I see it as a prime example of miscommunication and poor training on ICE's part. We already know that ICE does not, they don't have the most rigorous training. I think it might be like 2 months, I've heard, in some instances, and they kind of accept anybody. There's one woman recently, for example, who applied to join ICE just to show how easy it is to get in. And she had posted numerous Marxist, pro-Marxist posts on social media. She even failed a drug test, and they still took her in and said, like, yeah, we'll let you on here. It's like your $50,000 signing bonus, effectively. So because of that, I think what we're dealing with partially is not only what is this incredibly unjustified that he got shot, it shows you how poorly trained these guys are, because there was no real rules of engagement followed in this instance, in comparison to what someone in the Army is supposed to follow with rules of engagement. You usually are supposed to say, like, lower the weapon if they have a weapon out, or put the weapon away or hand it over, and not just immediately shoot at the guy. And it shows how the guy who took the gun away did not communicate well to his other officers, regardless. And finally, it doesn't look. It just makes them look like a bunch of trigger happy numbskulls, to put it simply. Given the fact that they then just opened fire on him, and it's as if they were looking for a reason to shoot one of the protesters. That's how it really seemed. And I do feel like ICE probably is really freaked out that someone is going to kill them at some point, and I can totally imagine that happening. But at the same time, like, this is just going to increase the likelihood that something like that happens. And I wouldn't even be surprised if you see more people who are more unhinged bring guns to these protests to try and provoke ICE in a way, to try and justify them using it. Point being, Alex Preddy shouldn't have been killed. ICE completely messed up. It's a good thing they're reconsidering and moving ICE out of Minneapolis. And it just shows you how poorly trained these guys are. They don't belong anywhere near law enforcement whatsoever, or anywhere near a gun in the first place.
So there's a point I want to transition from, considering some things that are being said in the chat, and then some overall points that are being made from conservatives, which is surprising to me. And that is this newfound want to criticize people who have a gun on them legally. I found this pivot quite fascinating, I'm not going to lie. So before we dive into that, the current speculation is that ICE agents, ICE people who are becoming ICE, are being pushed through very quickly. I think there are people saying that they can have now 47 days of training, which is different from the 5 months that it typically is. And of course, we saw Donald Trump doing all these recruitment strategies, give more money in the budget from both the Big Beautiful Bill, and now he wants to add even more money with another bill that was just put in place. So he's trying to incentivize as much people to join ICE as possible, and now he's lowering the standards. It's very clear what he's trying to do here. So you're correct about that, Danny. For me, when it comes down to the situation of the officers being spooked from the discharge, because that is also speculation, but that is a talking point that MAGA is trying to use to deflect blame from the ICE officer. I don't buy it. I don't think it's a good one, because in almost every situation where we're dealing with guns and we're dealing with people's lives, it's something's always going to go wrong. It's not as simple as especially when it's not a like normal procedure or normal operations where you're going out and take someone out. For the most part, something's going to go wrong because these are dangerous weapons and these are people's lives. So the expectation, especially for qualified law enforcement who not only have a level of immunity typically to have the power to tell people what to do operations, to just do things the average citizen shouldn't do, but also know how to handle themselves in circumstances the average citizen should be able to handle. The expectation is that they shouldn't be scared and they shouldn't be oblivious to the environment that's going on. Especially, I don't know if you saw the video, Elijah or Danny. When I saw the video, the guy that took the gun and the guy that shot the gun were right next to each other. They were not only right next to each other, the guy that shot the gun was looking down at the person, and there's no way in your peripheral you can't see the guy that's taking the gun at the same time. Now, it is a chaotic circumstance, but also one thing that I learned when I was in the military is be very aware of your surroundings, be aware of everything that is going on. So for him to be so, and he wasn't even keeping him down, he wasn't doing anything. The guy that shot was just standing there. So he had the utmost opportunity to pay attention to what's going on, and still can't notice a very clear situation where the guy was not armed, the guy had nothing in his hand, the guy was getting held down by 4 people, and still he was the threat. It just, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it when that's your job at the same time. So even though I can understand a human element of, oh, I heard a gun, so I'm scared, we need to also provide a certain level of like strict scrutiny with this, considering what their job is, what they're supposed to do, what they are supposed to train to know how to do, and considering the conditions around them where you had leverage over the individual that died. So yeah, I'm just not a fan of that. Of course, you guys can respond to that, but we'll also touch upon the Second Amendment stuff and the gun stuff in a second. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that, and I will push back a little bit on this. I guess my position generally is that the first officer who shot is like completely wrong, but every subsequent shot after that, I think, can have some sort of excuse from confusion or some sort of thing. And I will say, from the officer's perspective too, where the gun is shooting from, I guess you could just be, I don't know, a little confused. I do think that the first officer is completely wrong, and I would agree that his perspective is very obvious. And at least, why would he have to shoot that person? You know what I mean? The only excuse that I could think of is that he hears a gunshot and he doesn't know where it's coming from, and so he like turns and shoots somewhere else, maybe, or like looks around to see because he doesn't know exactly where it's coming from, but he knows it's not coming from that person. So I would agree with you that the first person who shot the bullet, I would say that the only difference is this idea that it is like ICE as this untrained firing squad. I do think you have milliseconds to figure out where these shots are coming from, and if it wasn't properly communicated by, again, the person who took the gun is like super at fault, and the first person who shot, who obviously saw that the gun was gone, is obviously at fault. But I think the rest of the officers, I'm not sure if you could say that that is like this laughably untrained squad of people. I do think that you have milliseconds to decide, and somebody said gun and shots are being fired. You have to trust that your officers are making good calls, and you have to be able to make some sort of decision to save a life, potentially, which would be the life of the other officers. So, but all I'm saying is that this is mostly a defense of the officers that are around this situation, not necessarily a defense of that first officer, which I really can't find a justification for. And that doesn't even get into all of the actions that led up to this, where it was the officer making terrible decision after terrible decision. So it's not even just this. There's more that kind of makes it very obviously the case that, you know, DHS in this situation was completely dropping the ball on this. But I do think that there is some human element that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand the perspective that the other officers reacted out of fear after hearing a gunshot go off. And that does make a lot of sense. However, it's also, again, the fact that this first guy fires this one shot, which then sets off everybody else. And then when you also get on top of it, the guy was already on the ground and or Alex Preddy's already on the ground. And we have, you can find videos of the police arresting people in the United States who are armed. You can find videos online of, the U.S. arresting people in Afghanistan or people being arrested or, taking prisoners of war in like the Russia-Ukraine war, so on and so forth.
Danny, real quick, can you center yourself better? Because on the vertical
Yes.
stream, that they cannot see you at all. You're like all the way on the left.
Yeah. No, well, the point being is they have, it just doesn't really show much professionalism here, especially when you're dealing with the civilian population. I mean, now we're seeing the point where Trump had, afterwards, there's so much backlash that they've basically said, okay, we're backing down and replacing Bovino because people are, freaked out and people are really mad about it. And it's basically the Trump administration quietly admitting to itself, okay, we fucked up. And now they're looking at the polling data and seeing that they're going down even more. It's not going well. So that is my entire opinion on it. It's just that the first guy shouldn't have shot. Alex Preddy was on the ground. He was not a danger to anybody. And the rest of the guys are shooting. I mean, I can understand to a certain extent why. I'm sure their cases will be reviewed in a court at some point. Maybe they have immunity now. Maybe they won't have immunity in 3 years, though. And we'll have to see where it goes from there. But as of right now, I think removing ICE from Minneapolis is completely justified. And Trump should be scared.
Yeah, I think it's justified too. I am willing to entertain, because when you're in an operation, whether you're in the police force or in the military, you expect everybody to be on the same page. So if one person says something, like you're one team, you're one unit, so you all fall in line regardless of what's going on. So like I understand that. I think we're at the very least we're all on the same page with the first individual and hyper focusing on his actions because he really started everything that took place, of course. Now there is a conversation. Talking about the gun aspect, and there are people not only in the chat but also online and also in general, and it's crazy to me that this is a talking point. And especially I'm curious on you, Elijah, who used to lean more right, so I'm sure I don't know your positions on guns, but for me, I've been pretty neutral regarding it. I think a universal ban won't work, but I also understand and recognize that we need better gun regulation. And it also dawns on me when there are people out there that want, hey, just universal open carry. You don't need a gun license or any of that. I think Ohio's like that, where you just carry a gun whenever. And that's like the Second Amendment position. That's the right-wing position. More guns means more safety. I think that's bullshit, but whatever. So with that position that's been so pro Second Amendment to the point you will always vote for Republicans because they love their guns, the fact that people are arguing that this guy's in the wrong because he had a gun in the first place at a protest is crazy to me. That is legally in his right. He had the legal justification to carry his gun, but now people are like, oh, you approach a cop with your gun, you're in the wrong. You approach it with the cop with a gun in your holster, you don't be surprised if you get shot. What do y'all think about this new wave of anti-Second Amendment rhetoric coming from the right?
Yeah, I think it's wild. I think a lot of conversation gets put back to the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. I remember hearing something, again, you're going to have to excuse my lack of political understanding, but I remember that some sort of press secretary who's like in charge was reiterating the fact that he came with a gun and had multiple magazines that could carry dozens of bullets or something, as if this was a point that was supposed to present some sort of legal justification for like that it had anything to do with anything. And I thought that was just such a crazy point. You know what I mean? When like the entire Kyle Rittenhouse debate, especially from the conservative end, which I'm a Kyle Rittenhouse defender generally. I mean, he had some wrongs happening in that situation too, right? But what I'd say though is that like it is so insane that you're able, that it would be so insane that you're able to have that perspective on him, but in this situation it's a problem that he has the gun. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. Like, I used to be libertarian. I even did work for both the Democrats and the Republicans in the past, going into college and then during college. In college, actually going into college, I was an intern at the Republican National Convention in 2016. And I remember standing outside with the Secret Service guys and them having to, quote unquote, lock down the area because there were a group of white supremacists coming with guns to protest openly, which is legal in Ohio. And then there was a group of the Black Panthers showing up as well to protest openly with guns. So the Secret Service basically got on horses and surrounded all these guys to basically kind of remind them, hey, you guys have guns, but you guys probably don't have military training. And effectively, if they were to if one of these guys fired a gun off, these guys, the Secret Service would have open fired into them and killed everybody. It would have been a massacre. And just thinking about that, I used to be very pro Second Amendment, and I'm definitely more skeptical, far more skeptical on it now. But going back to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, especially, and to these other cases, like you have people showing up to these protests with AR-15s, like the one that I was at in 2016, with tactical gear on it, like clearly an AR-15 that looks like it's designed to kill humans. It's not being used for any other purpose. And there to intimidate people. Then you have Kyle Rittenhouse, who, he was attacked by those people. It's very unclear who exactly. I'm still a little unclear on who exactly instigated it, but he did kill 2 people and severely wound another guy, and then ran to the police after the gunshots were fired. And the police didn't open fire on him immediately. You'll notice that they let him come into the side and they reviewed the case, and then people eventually found him innocent. Meanwhile, Alex Preddy here, he never had the gun out. He wasn't shooting it. He just had it with him, and he was thrown on the ground and shot. It's completely hypocritical what the right is saying about this, especially when, again, you have all these right-wing protesters who always vote for Trump show up to protest, and they love to, carry long rifles with them. It's stupid, and the right is just condemning him because he's on the left. They're like, we want guns for ourselves. We don't want guns for you, is the message that I think people are starting to get from this.
Yeah, and someone said it too. It said this in regards to it, and I want to be very clear regarding this situation. It's not just the fact that like how law enforcement engage with both individual. It's also the fact that they were using the argument that just having a gun on your person makes you an immediate threat is ridiculous, especially considering both circumstances. There were people that were not a threat to the officers. Yes, Rittenhouse gave himself up, but Preddy was, and now we're talking about the events leading up to it, immediately pepper sprayed after just getting in the middle between this ICE officer pushing a woman to the ground for some weird reason, pushed her to the ground. He got in the middle, was like, bro, chill a little bit. Then he just got pepper sprayed in the face. Then 4 ICE officers detained him to the ground, had all of his limbs completely restrained. There was no chance where you can look at this guy at this moment in this circumstance. There's no context. There's no circumstance when you're leading up to the engagement where he's a threat to anybody's life. So the fact that they were so frazzled to the point where they thought he should die is, again, it doesn't make sense. And it's super surface level. It's like, you have a gun on your person so you could die. The moment you engage, be prepared to die just because you have a gun on your person legally. It's insane to me. I'm 100% there with you.
Can I address something in these in these comments? Guess who farted this guy, which, by the way, is an awesome username. the arguments that you're making right now have literally, they cannot have anything to do with this case. So if you're talking about him not having like legal identification, or he doesn't have the license to carry, or whatever the situation is, all of that would be good if at any point they asked for a license, detained him, or did any of the procedures that they're supposed to do if they're going to be engaging in some sort of arrest on a person. And it has nothing to do, like you're saying all these things, like he engaged enacting this 2 weeks ago. That was not, all of this is post hoc assessment about this person's character. None of this was used to assess the dangers in that moment. So none of this has anything to do with the situation that we're talking about. You're just character assassinating to post hoc the execution of a person. And so I don't know what conservative stuff you've been watching that you think that this is making the argument. That's all of this is frustratingly missing the point, I think.
I'm so glad you said it, because it's ridiculous to start using this as your argument now to condemn all his actions leading up to the interaction. Like he even asked for a permit in the first place when they engage with one another. But let's talk about this specific thing that I get another talking point that I think is so ludicrous. They were acting like Alex Preddy, and you can criticize this. I am open-minded enough where I'm saying you could probably criticize that he shouldn't have got involved at all. When I'm dealing with law enforcement, I think the best case scenario is to never get involved, because even if I'm the best good faith person regarding cops, you never know what they might do, and they just have authority over you. He got involved because he saw a woman getting pushed to the ground. So the aspect of people acting like he interfered with an investigation, he obstructed an investigation, he was interfering with some of them dealing with some type of criminal. What are your thoughts about this kind of very aggressive language for Alex Preddy's actions regarding the ICE officer pushing a woman to the ground?
I mean, we don't know at all why. I don't know the full stories of why they pushed her to the ground, but it really just, I mean, again, just shows you how over the top these guys get with it, because this isn't the only video we've seen of ICE pushing someone to the ground. We've seen them pushing people to the ground on numerous occasions. In Minnesota, we've seen them in Chicago doing it. We've seen them firing tear gas at people for standing outside of ICE facilities, dancing, for God's sakes, or pepperballing people, and then arresting them afterwards. It's absolutely stupid what they're doing. So I wouldn't be surprised if these women were maybe getting a little too close or whatever, but to go and push them down like that seems pretty intense. And then to, of course, pepper spray Alex Preddy and then shoot him, it was just completely over the top. And I'm also seeing this point being made in the comment section about whenever you interact with law enforcement, always tell them you have a gun on you so that they don't accidentally shoot you. Well, in this situation at a protest, especially when you're legally allowed to concealed carry and you're standing on the side, is he supposed to go up to every single ICE officer and like basically yell, "Hey, I'm carrying a gun with me"? I mean, this woman was pushed over. He went to go help her up. It's not like that'd be a time where he'd say, "Oh yeah, by the way, I have a gun." It doesn't make any sense. It's completely different from being at a protest, concealed carried, and a woman gets pushed over or whatever and helping her up, other than being pulled over. I mean, it's completely unrelated point. I have a friend who I went to a bar crawl with a few years ago, and he had a gun on him the entire time. And we walked by numerous police officers, and he didn't go up to them and say, "Hey, yeah, by the way, just so you guys know, I have a gun on me." Like, why the fuck would you say that? That's completely stupid. And that would probably be a good reason for police to then really want to look into you, especially if you're at a protest. It just would cause unwanted attention and make the situation more volatile than it already is. And this situation was already incredibly volatile, as we're seeing. So I don't understand that.
Well, and beyond that too, with the gun thing, it's like you got to think about where the room for conversation was in any of this interaction, right? So it's someone pushes a woman down in front of you, and the guy just gets in front of him. He touches him like it seems almost seemingly accidentally, and like with the softest intent, just to like position himself in front of the woman. And then he gets pepper sprayed. So in the middle of that, is he supposed to be like, stop, I have a gun? Also, like any moment where you're putting yourself in front of an officer, that is just a verbal threat. Like no matter what your intentions are, the officers start beating on you and you start yelling, I have a gun. Like wonder where the vocality is supposed to come from in this interaction. If you can show me in the video where any like law-abiding arrest interaction was happening here, where people were speaking, let me know. And that's why I think the most egregious thing was the instant pepper spray. When somebody gets in front of you, at least the words like, sir, I'm going to arrest you if you're obstructing. Sir, you're under arrest. I will use force. Like any words that are supposed to constitute the following actions. But the only thing that police officer could muster was the instant start spraying. And I just think that is such the pinnacle of bad police work. If you're trying to say like, okay, yeah, he's obstructing, one, as a person, you should never just run and put yourself in between a police officer like seemingly doing his work, right? I mean, that's just a stupid idea. You shouldn't be doing that. That's like literally obstruction. But let's say you just find yourself in a position. It's not the officer's duty to instantly just start wailing on you. Like that is so ridiculous. Like at the very least, the officer is supposed to warn him, even if it's a split second before, I'm going to mace you. Like whatever it is, you don't just start fighting. So I just think that like that instantly eradicated all ability for there to be any sort of cordial confrontation once that started happening.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And finally, one of the person made this point, they were already on top of him. He couldn't reach the gun. His hands were down on the ground. He wasn't in any position to reach for the gun on him. He didn't even have it out beforehand. In every situation, you would say he shouldn't be shot. And I swear to God, you find videos of Marines arresting people in Afghanistan where it's much more volatile situation, and they don't. I mean, not to say that they didn't shoot civilians, they did, but you see way more professional behavior among them than you do among these ICE guys. And again, there's a reason why now the Trump administration is saying, okay, we're backing down, we're pulling out of this, because they realize that people are pissed and it's probably going to lead to more problems.
I do want to say one more thing. I want to hear Vidal speak on this as well. So I don't want to talk too much, but I do want to say that the point about him I'm definitely the person who will defend the most that you are morally obligated to surrender the police. You should not be resisting. It just destroys the line between innocence and guilt in a lot of these interactions. So this is where I'm saying that two things can be true at once. And for those of you that think that the fact that he was resisting excuses some of these other actions, you're just being brainwashed. Two things can be true at the same time. And if your minds can't handle that kind of existence, then I don't know what to say. You probably shouldn't be engaging in a conversation like this. But Riddell, I want to hear your thoughts on this, obviously.
I mean, yeah, y'all are cooking. And Danny, you made a very good point. I think it says a lot that Donald Trump, MAGA, are retreating from this. They realize this is so bad that Bovino got fired. His ass got fired because he went on an interview and said some of the most egregious thing. He said the real victim are the ICE officers, not Alex Preddy. I'm like, okay, all right, buddy, sure. And he called Alex Preddy the suspect. The suspect of what? Like, it's that boy got fired because he was dog shit at his job. There's more people that's going to get fired eventually. MAGA, watch out. And now they're starting to retreat from Minnesota. So we'll see how if it goes full through. But it's very clear, even the Trump administration realized how dog shit they've been in the Minnesota area, and they are losing. I want to be clear. They are losing the PR battle. There is a bigger conversation to all of this in terms of people's mistrust of ICE. Everybody that is talking regarding the Alex Preddy situation, all of you guys that are saying he assaulted, he interfered with the investigation, he shouldn't have the gun. You guys are brainwashed. You guys are cooked. I'm sorry. Get your brains checked. The bigger conversation regarding this is Now the sentiment behind ICE is moving towards so negative, people are entertaining the abolish ICE conversation. And I am conflicted with this talking point because somebody made the comparison to defund the police, the whole situation that was happening during the Black Lives Matter movement. And when that was happening, I always said, I don't like to defund the police movement. I don't think it makes any sense. If you defund the police, you're going to have worse cops. That's not helping your case. It's just not a good slogan. They're going to be less trained. They're going to have less resources, and you're going to have shittier cops. Crazy. We're seeing the exact situation like now, people who are getting worse training and now very shitty at their job. So I wasn't behind that movement. I would be behind like reallocating resources and better training is always my preference, and stricter requirements. Another thing I always said regarding cops, there should be no excuse that there's fat cops in the police force. No excuse. If you're supposed to run down a perp, you should be fit as hell. Fat cops make no sense. So that has been my stance. This current situation seems very different. I don't know how much you guys follow polling, but the polling says that a lot of people, even the average Americans, do not like ICE right now. They have a very bad rap. And in addition to that, there's 2 citizens, U.S. citizens that died. The situations are very clear. There's no justification for their death, even though if you want to defend them based off removing them from criminal liability, the justification for their death as a threat is nobody's buying it. And all the videos and imagery that I'm sure you guys have been seeing on social media of ICE just being unhinged. There's a new case going on with them trying to deport a 5-year-old. That's like very controversial going on. There's a situation where they they're taking U.S. citizens in based off racial profiling and then returning them. That's crazy. There are circumstances where they're threatening people who have cameras saying, put that away or else. There's other people saying, you raise your voice, I'm going to erase your voice. Big threat. So people are not happy with ICE. And this is a force that can be remade. We can allocate, you can create a different immigration force. What do y'all think about the current movement of abolish ICE right now?
Well, before I answer that, I would say to people in the chat defending Freddie, if you ask me, then based on your opinion, the British were right to cause the Boston Massacre. They had snowballs being thrown at them with ice in them and rocks, and the British were responding in self-defense, and those protesters, those patriots, demanding more representation in the British Parliament deserved to get gunned down in the streets of Boston. They were just, they were harassing the police. And the founding fathers were wrong, completely wrong. They should not have done that and used it as a calling cry. But in terms of the actual question,
he meant attacking Freddie, by the way. He said defending. He meant attacking Freddie. People who play
attacking Freddie.
Yeah, I just want to.
Yeah, attacking Freddie.
Sure.
But in terms of ICE, I honestly think that ICE is. We don't really need it. We don't need it. I think it should just be abolished. At this point, I think at this point it's also becoming extremely clear how poorly trained these guys are, and we're pouring apparently billions of dollars into training these guys. I read somewhere, I might be wrong, but apparently they're making like $200K a year is their salary, and yeah, it's some ridiculous amount, like a $50,000 sign-up bonus. And if that's the case, it's like, no, fuck this. We shouldn't be spending money on this. And like, I don't see what the major threat is with these immigrants. If you're going to, if ICE should be used for anything, they should be kept at the border to keep members of like the cartel out of the country. And they're not doing that. They're going into American cities and arresting immigrants who just don't have legal documentation on them and treating them as if they're the worst of the worst. And then going and starting fights in the streets with American citizens. So honestly, and they're showing that they don't know how to crowd control. They're not trained to do that. So in all honesty, I would say, yeah, you go ahead and abolish them and replace it with some new organization, or just overall put National Guard on the borders.
Yeah, I think a little bit of my inner Republican is going to come out with this take. I think that ICE as a unit or as the purpose that they're supposed to be doing is probably a good thing. Like, I don't mind deportations. The question is obviously.
Real quick pause, and then I'm gonna let you go crazy.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Just to give Danny the information, there is an individual that claimed he made $200,000 a year with a high school diploma joining ICE. That is a claim. Some reports on ZipRecruiter say entry levels from 50 to 78,000, and then experienced agents make up to like 160,000 a year. So then this is before their new amount of money they're going to get with the new bills. So,
well, they're being paid pretty well then.
Yeah, for sure.
I would like to make 200K, please. But
you can see why people are hiding their faces and joining up.
Sure. Yeah. So what I would say is that the concept of ICE, I think, is something good. I think a deportation largely is a good end. Now, obviously, the question is, do the means justify this end, and what can we reasonably expect is required to get this end? And so I think for me, like, police is a very interesting social contract that people sign, that the police are able to do essentially whatever they need to do to get crime off the streets. And this is what I was talking about. Like, resisting is probably the best course of action. One, because it's probably going to result in the least amount of harm for you. But beyond that, it's probably the best action because the police has no way to determine who is guilty and who is innocent. That's not their job to do. Their job is to get you into a court where they can actually do that. And so when all things are functioning and the trust in the police is good, or we think that they're good, the police is good. And this is theoretically how ICE is supposed to be. Now, the problem with ICE is they haven't had that time to be justified in the same way. There's a whole media apparatus that is designed to tell you that ICE is bad, and that could be true. I'm not saying it's not true. But this sowing of distrust kind of allows people to bully ICE out of places. And I think that that's probably wrong. Like, if we did that with the police, that's probably wrong. And so I think I'm definitely more of the reform territory. I'm definitely more of the accountability territory. And what I would say is, if ICE as a project, and if this project were to be wielded by anybody other than Trump, I feel like it would be way better. But the idea is that he is so fascistic in his brain that, like, this feels like the Gestapo getting put out. And so the idea is that from us as citizens, when we're deciding whether or not we're supposed to support this, or whether or not we're supposed to trust ICE or the police, it's so scary to tell people to trust when this is like the best runway for fascism to take place. And so I get the sentiment and I understand that there needs to be reform, but I also feel wildly uncomfortable about just like bullying an entity out of an existence when they're doing something that's probably okay or probably good. The question is, do the means justify the ends? And right now it seems obviously not, but I don't know if that's a function of ICE being bad or if that's a function of a bad ICE.
So there's examples of ICE being normal. Basically, every term besides this current one. From my understanding, after looking up real quick, ICE was established after 9/11, so we can kind of understand what ICE was going to do after 9/11, who they were going to go after, and why they were created. Joe Biden used ICE, of course. Obama used ICE. They deported a lot of people. They deported criminals, no, not just random citizens and just people who don't have a criminal record. But there's something to be said that the current version of ICE, although doesn't reflect its entire history, their image is so bad that the people have lost trust in the organization. And it's not something where if we lose ICE, we are cooked, because one, we can replace it pretty easily. Like, people are saying, oh, we need ICE for the border. We have border patrol. Like, we can put people there. And we do have other police force organizations or law enforcement organizations that can supplement it. If you are, and this is an interesting thing I heard recently, if you're one of those people who thought, oh, disbanding the Department of Education was a good thing, then, I mean, this would work under similar premises, because the Department of Education had a lot of responsibilities, and disbanding it, the idea is they delegate it in different places. Well, I guess you can make the same argument here. You disband ICE and you can delegate the responsibilities and other things that do very similar jobs that ICE does. So, although I understand your point. I guess, Elijah, the question would be, if public opinion about ICE is so bad, where the majority of people, yes, the majority of people, not the people that MAGA see on social media, actual polling is that ICE has a negative reputation. A lot of them hate what they've been doing in Minnesota, and it's only getting worse since Trump took over, starting because it was bad. It started during the California stuff, and it just got worse since then. And it's only been a year. If the public opinion's that bad, wouldn't it just be in the best interest to get rid of him at that point?
Yeah, what I would say too, this would be an example of like bullying something out of existence. What I would say is that like if there's a pragmatic issue with ICE in that like what they're doing or how they're doing something is bad, that obviously needs reformation. And if we could successfully disband it and allocate resources to get the same result, which would be deportations, I think the idea is that Border Patrol would help stop the border, and we probably should be funding that. But we also want to get people out of the country who, illegally immigrated here. And so the idea is that what you can do, and what the accusation is that Democrats are doing, is that they're disguising their wish to stop deporting people in general as critiques about the way ICE is doing things. And so if you wanted to get rid of ICE because you just hate deportations, you could just point to ICE being bad at what their job is to stop deportations. And so the idea would be that if we're going to replace it with something else, they're going to disband ICE, and then they're not going to replace it with an adequate thing that does what ICE was supposed to do. So I guess what I would ask both of you, and I wonder what your thoughts are, how do you guys feel about deportations in general? Like, do you feel like deportations are moral? Do you think we should be funding it? Not saying that ICE, how they're doing it is good, but should we be funding a team that deports people? And how do you guys feel about deportation in general as a function?
I mean, deportation in general, I think it should be mainly, I think it should be mainly reserved for people who have committed violent crimes, for the most part, that are immigrants who are in the country illegally and commit violent crimes, or just immigrants who are here legally but go and commit a violent crime. That's what I think it should primarily be used for. I'm also biased though, because I am an immigrant technically right now, so I do have a huge bias in that sense. But I mean, when people talk about deporting some guy because he didn't have the proper documents on him or whatever, and he hasn't done anything else wrong aside for work a 40, maybe even up to 80 hours a week. I mean, keep in mind, these people don't have the same regulations they're working under in comparison to us as citizens. I think it's completely unjustified to force them out. I think, if anything, the U.S. should look into simplifying the immigration process, or simplifying the green card process, and making it easier for people to come in who want to work here legally, while then putting more money into actual border defense to protect against things like the cartels and other criminal organizations. I overall don't really have anything against a guy being in the U.S. legally. I think, if anything, he's being kind of screwed over because he's not legal and he doesn't get any access to the same benefits that a citizen would get access to in his situation. So that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, for me, I'm similar. I am not a fan of criminals. Deport them. I'm perfectly okay with deporting criminals who are not supposed to be here. I think that's perfectly fine. That's why I have no issue when Biden was doing it, and I have no issue with Obama's doing it. What makes it different with Trump is he's deporting people that are not criminals. That is the problem. That is what's going on. And he's putting
American citizens.
And American citizens. And he's putting people in Alligator Alcatraz. He's going over at people who are just working, that are waiting for the asylum process because it's so goddamn slow. Like Danny was talking about, our immigration process is super inefficient, super slow. It needs more resources. Clearly, MAGA has done nothing to help it get more resources. As someone mentioned in the chat, there was a bipartisan bill to add more judges, streamline it a little bit better, but that was canceled because Trump wanted to run on it for his presidential campaign. And then ever since he's been president, have we heard anything about them actually trying to do that at all? Nope, they don't want immigrants. So that is the problem. What's going on? There's very clear, distinct difference. It's not that they hate illegal immigration. They hate immigration. Let's not beat around the bush. They just don't want immigrants in the country, and it's very clear that that is the growing sentiment on the right. So for me, when you ask, how do I feel about deportations? As of right now, I hate how they're doing it at the moment, but I'm okay with deporting people. But I'm also extremely pro immigrant. I do think that the United States, being the melting pot country, being the land of opportunity, being the country that's supposed to signify the value of the American dream, which I've talked to a lot of guests. I think I'm here where I'm saying the American dream right now is dead. Until further notice, it's dead. So all those things that I was taught when I was a kid about how great America is doesn't seem like it's like that anymore. And we're seeing not only that in terms of like our values and questioning the constitutionality of certain things that the Trump administration is doing, but economically we're getting like ruined because of how much we're deporting people. So there has been no benefit other than, no offense to you guys, making white people feel good. I'm sorry, that's the only benefit that's happened for this situation, and it's unfortunate. So that would be my answer to you.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't disagree with all of that. I think this would just be another example of multiple things being true at the same time, right? Like I'm making a somewhat minor distinction that ICE as a function, like deporting people as a function.
This derails a little bit, but I thought this was funny as fuck, so I'm just gonna highlight it.
Yeah, I saw Danny laughing at this too when he saw it. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. But yeah, I think that multiple things can be true at the same time. Like we can say that ICE as a function or deportations as a function is good. It's just the way that it's currently being run is terrible or bad or something like that. It needs some sort of reform. And then there are also other things too. I will say that saying that we shouldn't fund ICE because it would be better to solve the problem to defend the border, I think is kind of it's like a purposefully distracting sentiment, because we could just do both and they achieve different things, right? And I wouldn't say that we shouldn't do something because one thing is better. There might be pragmatic reasons that we do one thing for a little while, or we do both, or both solve the problem or something like that. So I would just need a little bit more than there are other ways to solve this particular problem more effectively. We can maybe just do both at the same time. So I dislike that point a little bit, but in general, I agree with you guys. I would just say that you're making a statement more about the current administration's wielding of ICE, not necessarily ICE as a function. Maybe Danny was a little bit more against ICE as a function than Riddell you are, but regardless, I think I think that what you guys are saying is true. I just think multiple things can be true at the same time.
I mean, no, I see your point. I will say, like, even though I do support getting rid of ICE, I realize it wouldn't be a very easy process completely. I mean, for one, we would have to find either another organization or have to give it all that those resources over to Border Patrol, and it would take, I feel like, a certain period of time. Finally, it's what do we do with all these agents now that were once in it? And honestly, as far as I'm concerned, they can eat shit. I don't give a shit what happens to them. But it really does come down to that. I think the biggest thing, though, because obviously we're going to have some sort of border control or whatever in the end. We already do have Border Patrol. Is we need to redo the training completely, especially teaching them how to work with civilians, et cetera, especially in their crowds. And also, I saw this comment pop up in the chat. I should note that I actually am an American. I immigrated to Europe. So that's where I am. And the immigration process in Europe is very easy. So that's part of the reason why I say that.
It's interesting because I looked at it recently. I just looked at it right now, actually. So the infamous, people know, not a fan of Fox News, but this is an interesting polling right now from a Fox News poll talking about support for abolishing ICE right now. 42% oppose, but that is a surprising number to me for a Fox News poll, that is 42% and 36% favor. The stark difference, more than doubling since 2018, is extremely interesting. And then right now, for again the Fox News poll, it seems like the majority of people are saying ICE is being too aggressive right now. So again, this is actual data, not your feelings you find on Facebook posts, people. This situation is something that the people care about. But ultimately, I agree that this wouldn't be the best thing to run on. But I do think it's an interesting conversation regarding PR wins, since that's what a lot of politics is like what visually looks good to the average person. And if people start coming to the conclusion, as Joe Rogan said, where people start thinking this is the Gestapo, then there's no saving the reputation of ICE, and there might be a legitimate cause for getting rid of it altogether. But we'll see. We still got a few time. We have to see if this is going to be a consistent trend or if people are going to change their mind in regards to this. So, with that said, anything else regarding the ICE topic that we haven't touched upon?
I just say one last thing. They talked about this on Fox a few nights ago, and even Fox then was talking about how effectively this is unjustified what happened, and talking about how ICE is getting controversial. And I think that's part of the reason why Trump and them are all then saying, okay, we're pulling out of Minnesota, because they effectively realize, okay, our guys don't even support us and we need to worry about the midterms now.
Patty, there's nothing I have to say. Patty, Elijah is not that bad, Patty. You know me. Elijah's a good guy. He's not a bad person. It's okay.
So
that's it. Bring Patty on. That's it. We're duking it out.
So yeah, I think that should be noted overall.
Oh yeah. I do want to say this before we wrap it up. A little tiny topic, because I found this very interesting. The trend of banning social media for the youth is growing, and it's growing quickly. And I'm surprised about it. Obviously, I'm sure you guys are aware of the Australia thing that happened where they banned social media. France is now also considering banning social media for 15-year-olds and younger. And now there's going to be a conversation there's going to be a hearing with all the social media companies in regards to their impact on the youth. Are we moving towards the worldwide social media is bad for kids movement?
Yeah, I would say so. We definitely are moving in that direction. It makes sense. I mean, kids get, really dumb ideas on social media. They see it and they think it's real. They can't differentiate between what's real and what's fake, especially when it comes to like when it's a real social media personality like Mr. Beast doing something or whatever, doing these pranks, and then thinking, okay, that's a good idea, I'm going to try it. There's been issues with people feeling like, you have then these alpha males going around saying how you should be acting, which is leading to like an increase in misogyny in a weird way among young school kids. And ultimately, I would say violent rhetoric as well, as kids being exposed to that online from literal adults. I mean, we've all played COD in the past and we know how we talked to people back then. So, I mean, I'm sure we can kind of understand that.
We've all been on Omegle as kids. Been on Omegle.
So I don't think it's a bad thing to ban kids from having it. I don't think they're missing out on anything, in all honesty, and it's also way too addictive. And I say this as somebody who uses YouTube Shorts way too fucking much. I will admit I have an addiction to that crap.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is making sense to me. I think that the addiction problem is probably a little bit more serious. I think, or not serious, but it doesn't scare me as much as saying something like, we want certain types of rhetoric to not be imbued in kids. That type of stuff is kind of scary, whether it's true or not. I do think the addiction thing is pretty serious. I will say though that I feel like there should be some sort of community engagement online. Now, it doesn't have to be through social media, but I will say that the the sense of community that I feel with strangers when I can just say like it's under the sauce and just people kind of know what I'm referencing just from, and it's like that's just a sentence, but people who have been on TikTok like understand this kind of reference. Or if I say whatever the most common meme is, right, it actually does build a culture, especially for kids who don't fit in really well. It gives them an in, and it gives them a community of people to talk with. But there are other apps to do that with.
Yeah.
I would say there are lots of good cultures, but I think that this can be replicated through different programs, apps, or something like that. But as long as we don't get rid of this social aspect, I'm generally like for the ban. But I do think that there is salvageable stuff in here that I think is generally positive for kids and people in general.
I'm way more pessimistic. I'm gonna be honest. I just am, from everything I've seen regarding social media and its influence. And the reason why I'm pessimistic is a couple of things that were said, not only from you guys, but also people in the chat, is that the incentive is dollars. One of the easiest ways to get that ad revenue is kids, because they're going to be wanting to, we see it, they're going to want to be playing the games on there. Shout out Farmville, back when MySpace was a thing. They're going to be scrolling through clips consistently, not knowing any better, being influenced by all this, 6-7 memes and English or Spanish memes, all that stuff. So kids are a really good ad revenue, or a really good money machine for big corporations and rich people. That's one problem. Second problem is that there is an incentive. And I always question how nefarious I want to get with this, or how pessimistic I want to get with this, of wanting to influence the youth. Especially, like we see that in politics in particular, they're trying to influence the young demographic. We see that with how Charlie Kirk did it, and they're so pissed because all the educated people at college are smart enough to not vote red. Now they are try to steal them away. So there is a want to politically influence the youth, and social media is a big way there. That's why Donald Trump didn't want to get rid of TikTok, so he could be on TikTok, create a whole White House account so he can influence people there. And then there's the third problem. Parents, I'm gonna be nice. Some parents suck at their job, and they are not doing a good job at ensuring that the kid has a good balance between life and social media and contextualize everything they're saying. So with so many factors that are, dare I say, being predatory to the youth, I don't trust any of these elements enough to the point where it should be allowed at this point. I think social media has a lot of really good stuff. I advocate for a version of social media that is completely made for kids, but there's no incentive to do that. Nobody wants to do that. So at this point, I think suffice to say, it's probably better for it to be banned or extremely heavily restricted, and we'll see how it kind of goes from there. But yeah, I'm just not as gung-ho.
I just get a little bit uncomfortable when like a government starts to say things like parents aren't able to parent, and so we should step in to do something. I'm not saying, I mean, we do this all the time in a ton of legislation, so I'm not saying that that's inherently wrong. I'm just saying that there's kind of like a higher bar that needs to be crossed. But I will say also that there are other beneficial things about the internet use that is unrelated to maybe social media. But like I said, I feel like creativity, like did you guys have YouTube channels when you were kids and you were like making videos for people to see? And I just remember that was like, that was such a good use of my creative energy, was to like make videos and try to be YouTube famous or something like that. Like, I understand that maybe I dodged a bullet in some of this, right? But I'm just saying that there are some uses, and same with like knowledge acquisition. You have people learning stuff on social media. The idea is maybe that it needs to be regulated by the parents more, which is something that I think every single person on the planet agrees with. And so the question is like, is there a way we can maybe replicate the positives of social media without throwing the baby out with the bathwater? I think maybe. But in general, I agree with a lot of these sentiments.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I guess I'm just not as trustworthy, Elijah. I've seen too many parents do bad jobs. Too many parents do bad jobs for me to have faith in them doing it. I know. I mean, you prefaced that you know that there is legislation that does step in there for bad parenting. I just think there's more bad parenting than you think. I just think there's so much bad parenting.
You're probably right. I mean, like I said, I think for me it would be a pragmatic thing. If you could show me maybe like something that a higher percentage of something was bad, then maybe that would just like win it for me. So, but yeah, I agree.
Fair enough. All right. That is all we got for the open panel. Any final words, any final things you guys want to let loose? This is the first time on this stream, so this is a new environment. As you can see, I have a very interesting people in the chat. It is interesting individuals, but anything else you got?
No, that's it. I don't have much else to say. Besides for, I think it was a good conversation, especially about ICE. I think the social media point you brought up is very interesting, and I think that'd be a good topic for another time because there's a lot you can discuss there, and I think everyone has an opinion on it at this point, given the fact that it partially dictates our lives in some way, shape, or form.
It does. After the hearing with the social media companies, I'm probably going to react to that on stream. And after that, we probably should talk about the future of social media that week, whenever that happens.
Yeah.
Any final words, Elijah?
Yeah, just shout out to my biggest fan, Patty. Thanks for watching and hanging out, right? But no, I think the conversation on ICE is good. What I will say too is that the scary part for me is that there are two really risky situations going on at the same time, right? And so you have like this potential media apparatus that's lying to you about like the dangerous interactions with ICE, and maybe behind the scenes 95% of them are like totally fine, but this gets blown up to make you just throw out the entire operation, and then we no longer get rid of illegal immigration. I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just saying that there are two threats that are happening here. And then you have the probably more obvious threat, which would be that you have a fascistic president who is trying to weaponize a Gestapo to enact whatever his will is on democratic cities that literally have like no problem with illegal immigration. And so you have like these two threats that are happening at the same time. And I understand people's like predispositions to only focus on one, but I would just warn people not to throw out the entire like apparatus to solve a problem that maybe there are other types of solutions for. So that would just be my overarching thing. But again, I think that we ended up talking about a lot of the important stuff on ICE. So
I will say, even though there is a growing sentiment that ICE is awful, the Democrats, the politicians themselves, have not shown the willing. Generally, I think some people, some Democrats, very small percentage, probably have said something like, oh, we need to get rid of ICE or abolish ICE. But generally, the Democrats have not moved to the point where they are pushing the abolish ICE movement. But I'm sure they're considering it on their chalkboard of, is this a point to run on as a politician coming to the midterms, which is being interesting. Oh, last thing, and I forgot to ask this. ICE will be a very important topic. And the Democrats potentially can use ICE regulations as something that they want to keep the government shut down. More than likely, another government shutdown is about to happen. So, do you like that? Do you think we should keep the government shut down? We should keep the government shut down until they reform ICE. Do you think that's a strong enough position to have? Curious on your thoughts on that real quick.
I think that's a very strong position to have, and it gives the Democrats a weapon to use against the Republicans and against Trump, especially. So I think it's a really good idea from a political standpoint. Obviously people
Feel
will
free to drop your channel, Elijah. Sorry, Danny.
No, it's okay. Obviously, it will result in people not being able to get certain resources, and some people not being paid. But it makes sense given how furious people are. Voters hate ICE; they don't want it, and I think you will see that people will generally support the shutdown.
What's your thought, Elijah?
Yeah, for this, this is a little out of my wheelhouse as it's like a pretty, like a political effectiveness. I think I said this in my conversation with you that sometimes it's a little frustrating where we kind of dislike certain government processes like filibustering or government shutdowns, free speech, concepts like this until our side or the Epstein files. That's what we were talking about in one of the conversations. But once one side gets the opportunity to benefit from this, suddenly all desire to get rid of this kind of unhelpful process leaves. And this is what perpetuates. So there kind of needs to be one side that's able to roll over and not engage in this. I'm not saying it has to be the Democrats right now, but this is the kind of thing that perpetuates Republicans using this exact same tactic on us later. So if I were to just be like naive and take this moral stance and say that it's wrong to keep the government down, it's like, that might be naive and we might just get walked all over. Like I think some Democrats have been saying we've been doing for years and years. Maybe I'd say that, but as of now, I think that this is definitely a big enough issue and it causes so much uncertainty and so much untrust in law enforcement that this is something that's worth shutting the government down for, I think.
Yeah.
Also for my channel, I'm struggling to type it in here for some reason. It just won't let me link my YouTube account live right now, but my channel is Spotlight with Elijah Moore. So if you look it up, it will come up if you do that full thing. So yeah, that's how you find me.
Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that. We'll figure that out. Danny, you're about to say something?
I think that it would be especially a good weapon for the Democrats to use now, given how angry people are about it. So they might as well try it. I don't see why not. And it might get them some support because you're hearing people, especially Democrats, saying we want to feel like the Democrats are on our side. You guys have been too passive aggressive this last year, et cetera. And I think this is a very good opportunity for them to show, okay, we're listening and we're going to crack down on Trump right now with this one. I will give the Democrats a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, even though I do think they have been being weak. I don't think they've been put into a position quite yet where they can be strong, and that's where we are kind of ending up at.
Yeah, I'm probably in favor. And not only will they be able to utilize that, but also, of course, the fact that more than likely the ACA subsidies will not be extended as well.
Yeah.
So they can also run back that because a lot of Americans were not happy about that. And it seems like they got the SNAP stuff figured out. So they have a lot of ammunition. A lot of people are not happy with the ACA. A lot of people are not happy with the ICE stuff. And of course, the creme de la creme of Donald Trump's administration, the Achilles heel that his administration brought up in the first place, they are not happy on how they're dealing with the Epstein files. So the Democrats have plenty of things to use to pressure MAGA, and MAGA is going to keep on retreating, and it might be a Kristi Noem firing. I know that she's on the hot seat. Pam Bondi's on the hot seat. So we will see. We'll see. But that is all we got, ladies and gentlemen, for today's open panel. Appreciate everybody you tuned in. If you're listening to the podcast, rate it 5 stars. This probably won't be up. This probably go on as a video at some point. So if you're watching the video, make sure you guys like it, subscribe, all that good stuff. And again, if you want to be a panelist, if you want to come here and share your thoughts in a civil, productive manner, just reach out to me. My email is available, and then we could talk and see if you're not crazy. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, y'all have a good one. Take care. Miller's bad too, but Donald Trump's not getting rid of Stephen Miller, Patty. That's just not happening. I'm sorry to say.
You sure?
Yeah, have a good one. Take care. Peace.